My name is Sami Hamdi. I'm the managing director of the International Interest, a risk company that advises corporates on the politics and how it affects them.
Which postmodern activists, scholars, and/or thinkers have influenced you the most?
The first is Muhammad Asad, formerly known as Leopold Weiss, an Austrian Jew who became a journalist, then became Muslim, and then became Pakistan's representative at the United Nations. He wrote a book, The Road to Mecca by Muhammad Asad. The Road to Mecca changed my life. I read that book at 18. The second is Alija Izetbegović, Bosnian, European, ethnically European, who wrote his book Islam Between East and West, and wrote his book Inescapable Questions, which is an autobiography about how he navigated the Bosnian War and how he navigated the tensions in which NATO would not intervene early because they were concerned about Muslim majority country in the heart of Europe. These two Europeans have the most influence on my thinking today.
How do you navigate coalition building in political advocacy for causes deeply ummatic when many of these individuals and institutions are not coming from the same Islamic paradigm as we are?
There is a difference between unity of organization and unity of purpose. It's easy to unite people on a goal that is purpose, which is against genocide, whether it's talking about for the rights of African Americans or the rights of Muslims. You don't need to share the values of life with other organizations so long as you're pursuing something of purpose. When you see those who we don't share their values on the front lines denouncing genocide, they are denouncing the slaughter and murder of Palestinians. The Palestinian will not ask, why did these leftists or the likes go and stand for Palestine? They will say, why weren't you there? Why weren't you on the front lines? And will you dare say to the Palestinian that I didn't go out and stand on the front lines because I didn't want to be seen next to this person? Is this an excuse you will give to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam if you ever get the chance to meet him in Jannah? Navigate them based on purpose. I don't need to agree with all of your values. When it comes to the education system and shoving LGBT down our children's throats, I'm not for that, and I will stand with those who are against that. But if you are on my side in terms of anti-genocide, then I am standing next to you. And don't forget the power of da'wah. There's a reason why those who don't share our values are standing against the genocide. It's because there's a fitrah in their hearts that is roaring, and therefore that is fertile soil for da'wah. The Muslim was sent as a mercy to society. Remember that, and you will find that in every purpose where you can give da'wah, you will pursue it, even if it means working with different organizations, because you are organizing based on purpose, not organization based on recognition of those values.
How can someone interested in a career in journalism and political analysis thrive in the workplace without compromising their Islamic values, morals, and ethics?
I think that answering that question in abstract is difficult, and that's why many people, when they answer this question, they give anecdotes. I think the reality is that from my personal experience, I have found that those Muslims who go to the bar, or the bar as you guys say in America, that those Muslims who go often end up being looked down on by their co-workers, as opposed to those Muslims who don't go, in which they go through a period of difficulty with their colleagues, but ultimately win their respect. And that respect is something that lasts in such a way that in my own career, those who brought me the clients were non-Muslims, because they would say that Sami is a bit Islamic in his views, but he knows how to analyze politics. So don't worry about his views here. He knows how to save you money in terms of analysis of politics. Talent shows, and that's why I think often it's not about how do we navigate it. The question is actually, how do I endure that struggle and push through it? And often the Ummah finds itself incapable of putting up through struggle. And that's why the question is not how do we navigate it. The question is the struggle worth it? And I say yes, it is.
What can the world learn from recent Islamic movements fighting against authoritarianism and fascism in the Muslim world?
I think that the most important thing to learn is that history is constantly moving, and Ibn Khaldun says a status quo never lasts. Oppression leads to the destruction of civilization regardless of what the civilization is. So when you see oppression, you know the formula, you know something is going to happen. 100 years ago, the Muslim world was under official colonization. Now it's not, because the Ummah kicked them out. We keep saying the Ottoman Caliphate fell, it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy, true, but the colonizers could not capitalize, because less than 50 years later, although the Ottomans fell, France couldn't stay in Algeria, Italy couldn't stay in Libya, the British couldn't stay in Egypt. Why? The Ummah did not die with the fall of the Caliphate. The Ummah kept resisting, because what's important for an Ummah, as Ibn Khaldun says, is that an Ummah is not defeated when it's defeated militarily, it's defeated when it's defeated psychologically. And that's why the magnificence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not necessarily in the material achievements he did, although they were great, but rather in the spirit he left behind. in which at any point in history, so long as the Muslim believes in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, there is always salvation around the corner, because the Muslim keeps striving regardless of the situation. My advice is inherit the memories of those who came before you, so you see the Ummah for what it is, not what you think it is, and that will enable you to see the path forward.
Do you consider the Arab Spring a success? Why or why not?
I think that if you look at the last 100 years, official colonization, colonizers are kicked out. We have a period of independence in which we don't use it to their maximum effect, but at least we managed to ensure and entrench a situation where colonizers are unable to come back. They are unable to recolonize. The global order has shifted permanently because we're not allowing that to happen. Then we have a new test, a new challenge, from colonization to authoritarian regimes. The Arab Spring comes, we show we can topple the authoritarian regimes, which shows oppression doesn't last and people still have power. Some people complain that the result is chaos, but what is chaos? Chaos is the inability of a power to subjugate another. It means the power that used to subjugate the people no longer has the power to do so, and therefore, although chaos is tragic, chaos is actually progress, in the sense that you believe it to be tragic, but those authoritarian regimes are trying to shut the door because they believe that they once chained it, and one by one the chains keep breaking, and if the people keep going, one chain gets broken, the other gets broken. You think we are being weakened, they think we're getting stronger, and they are desperately saying to themselves, guys, these guys are breaking the chain, how do we shut it? That's what the chaos is. I don't know who will win, but it's better than the colonization, it's better than the authoritarianism, because now everything is up in the air. It's up to us to maximize it to achieve justice, inshallah.
In the past, you've been labeled as both overly critical of Erdogan and overly supportive. Can I ask you for your take on the South Africa ICJ submission? I know that since when Turkey and Qatar have sponsored it, and Turkey has halted trade with Israel, how meaningful do you think this is?
If you follow life on the basis that you judge right and wrong based on individuals, then you will judge my analysis based on being supportive and being critical. If you judge it based on principle, you will find a consistency that those who do wrong are criticized and those who do good are praised, regardless of who that person is. Whether it's bin Salman squeezing Biden in 2022, 2023 with regards to the oil, or whether it's Erdogan when he squeezed the Americans into coming to Ankara to plead with him to make concessions when he threatened to go into Syria. The point with the ICJ, I think that Turkey is still hardcore pro-normalization. They want to keep ties with the Israelis. We are seeing statements from Erdogan, but Israeli diplomats going back to the Israeli embassy. We're seeing Saudi Arabia use the word genocide for only the second time since the genocide began, while at the same time insisting that normalization is possible, just not now because Muslims are angry over Gaza. I think that the fact it took South Africa to go to the ICJ is an indictment on the Muslim world, but we Muslims, we say, God bless South Africa for taking the case to the ICJ. I think Turkey joined the ICJ case only after it saw the public opinion shift, because it doesn't want to be accused of being on the wrong side of history. Otherwise they would have stayed neutral. I think that Qatar joined the ICJ case only after they knew the Americans were under pressure, because they didn't want to offend the Americans before. They're not doing it necessarily because they wholeheartedly support it, although they do support it. They're not doing it because of that. They're doing it because you made the shift. You shifted public opinion, you made Biden isolated, you forced the Europeans to break with the Americans. That's when Erdogan said, you know what, I kicked out Hamas in the beginning, Hamas for algorithm purposes. I kicked them out in the beginning of the genocide, but now the mood is changing. I want to see it at the table. Let me bring them back to Ankara. It's a very dark political game that is being played.
Sudan has been grappling with conflict and displacement since the start of the Darfur crisis in 2003. Could you explain in simplified terms the cause of that crisis and its link to the current situation today?
Sudan has been under sanctions for 30 years because there is a belief that because Islam is central to the Sudanese identity, therefore there needs to be pressure and sanctions to force the Sudanese to toe the line. Sudan it's written in Netanyahu's memoirs that Netanyahu personally lobbied Washington in order to sanction Sudan because they were giving supplies to the Palestinians and enabling them to resist. After the revolution of 2019, the Sudanese thought that they did a revolution, but Washington believed that the toppling of al-Bashir was the result of sanctions. So when people wanted elections to decide their rulers, Washington said, don't get it twisted. You didn't topple the regime. I sanctioned you into revolution and I decide the terms. And that's why the leftist parties came to an agreement to skip the elections and embark on constitutional changes that they would never achieve democratically. They removed Islam from the constitution, and the new draft does not even have Bismika Allahumma, in the name of Allah. That was the compromise they made with the Christians in the south. They normalized ties with Israel, knowing they couldn't democratically do so. And when it was threatened that the people might hold elections, the UAE and Washington believed that it's preferable to watch a militia plunge the country into war and seize power, to maintain this transition that doesn't support the democracy, to maintain that is preferable to Sudanese holding the elections. It's a social engineering project.
What should be the priority of Muslims who are already mobilizing and active on social media globally with regard to the socio-political situation of the Muslim Ummah?
I think that the priority should be dissemination of information. Teach the Ummah. Teach them what's happening in Palestine. Teach them what's happening in Sudan. Show them what's happening in the Uyghurs. Show them what's happening with the Rohingya. Show them the potential of what they can do in November. Show them the numbers, how to flip the incumbent. Show them that to punish Zionism by making every incumbent fall because they supported Zionism is worth it. Show them that the struggle of the next 4 years is worth it because you survived the worst case scenario 4 years already under the other side. Show them information that will enable them to recognize their power and then manifest it.
Based on your political knowledge of the Ummah, what do you believe is the end goal of politics for Muslims in America?
Politics, in my opinion, is the science of human relations, no more, no less. Politics is not about an end goal. It's about the consistent engagement between different communities and societies and the opportunities that brings and how we push back against the negative. And that's why I think hadith in and of itself is a political book. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Afshu salama bainakum," say salam alaikum to each other. If you read it like a dajjal with one eye, you will believe it's for your own personal spiritual boost. If you open the other eye, you will see that if we're a society going around saying Assalamu alaikum to each other, where we make each other feel valued, where we make each other feel honored on a daily basis, where would you like to be when you feel honored? You want to be amongst the Muslims. You want to be with the community. You want to move with the community. Hadith are political just as much as they are spiritual because they're designed to recreate the community from which you are able to embark on making lasting change. Thank you for watching. You don't need to visit my website. Just learn your history, inherit the memories, and keep moving, ya ibadallah, and you will make the difference, inshallah.